Here we go, into the sermon. So we are talking about relationship restoration this month, and I am actually really pumped about this sermon series. If you have friends who maybe have been having a rough time, invite them to come over the rest of this month as we talk about relationship restoration. We're not just talking about in marriages, we're talking about every relationship. Because what I have found, if you're like me, is that over time, it seems like the wear and tear of our lives tend to put a lot of stress on our relationships. It's kind of like the deck that's off the back of my house. Jenny and I, about a year and a half ago, we painted the deck, we sanded it, we made it beautiful. And we did all this because our neighbors had told us it took them like half a day to get their deck all stained and ready, So, liars, I mean, we're like half a day, we can do that easy. So we get out there, we buy all the stuff, and we're staining, I'm power washing. Awesome, totally a good excuse to buy a power washer. I mean, we're just taking this deck to town, and we're working on it, and we start painting. No joke, like 4 days later, we're still out there like this, I mean, they're over there drinking their margaritas, laughing at us, you know what I mean? I mean, just hilarious. But what really stinks about having gone ahead and stained the deck is now a year and a half later, I'm outside grilling burgers yesterday, and I'm looking at our deck, and I'm like, it is ugly, because already our dog has worn off all these patches where they jump and run, and where I stand, the grill is worn out, and it just already looks pitiful and ugly. Because over time, wear and tear takes its toll on stuff. And the same is true for your relationship. It is not enough to have just stood at an altar and said, I do, and think that's going to be okay. Any of you who've lasted past like a year, no, that's not enough. It's not enough with your kids to just give birth. I know it's a hard event to push. Getting those suckers out is tough, but that's not the end of it all, there's more beyond that to keep that relationship going. And so this month, we're just going to talk about some topics that are real and practical and that hopefully will help you find some restoration, maybe some places that you didn't even know were kind of getting some wear and tear and toil on them. Everybody good with that? Yes? All right. So as I was thinking about this morning, what we're going to talk about is kind of how to maybe help us get a handle on how we use our words in relationships. Because it may be not something that you think about all that often until it kind of comes up, but my guess is that most of us have some issues with the way we use words, and those words can be so destructive in relationships. It makes me think about my daughter, Parker. She's our third child, and for 2 years, she's 2.5 now, somewhere in that range. I don't really know. I've got 4 kids. You can't expect me to keep track of them all, She's like 2 and something, but when she was about 2 years old, we had, up until that point, had a phenomenon happen every single night of the week, all year long. Every night, we'd put all the kids in bed, and we'd give them kisses, and I'd tell them a story. They'd all scream and yell and have fun, and then they would get in bed, and we would pray together, and then we would turn off the lights, and Jenny and I would go downstairs, and we would sit huddled around the monitor, waiting for this phenomenon to happen. And it would start like this. And Jenny would go, oh no, it's coming. And I would get like sweats, and I'd start like shaking. And pretty soon and it would get a little worse. And then Jenny she knows the cough. I still can't pick up on the cough because she's like, you didn't hear it? And I'm like, I don't know, I'm shell-shocked. Jenny hears this specific cough come out of Parker's mouth. And she takes off like a bullet up the stairs. I mean, she's like smooth like butter, flying up these stairs. She goes around the corner, she's coming into Parker's. She grabs a trash can, throws the door open, and shoves the trash can under Parker's face, grabs the child by her head, and dunks her into the trash can. And Parker goes, and it's all over. Now, here's the problem. If I'm the one responsible to listen to the coughs, we do all of the same adventure, but it's usually 5 seconds too late. And there is all over pillows and sheets, and I'm in there trying to, and I don't, any other dad, that typical dad that like goes in and looks at it and you go, and you're like, and your child has that thing hanging in their hair, and you're like, my poor wife is having to deal with this whole mess. You see, what I have found is that in a lot of us lives, it's kind of funny you can totally picture me having to do that, right? And you're like, poor sucker, I think it's funny. I don't even care if you had to deal with puke every night for the last 2 years. But for a lot of us, we have the same kind of like phenomenon occurring in our lives all the time, except it's not with stuff that comes out of our gut, like as far as our stomach. It's stuff that comes out of our mouth. And we spew stuff all over the people that we love all the time. And what's unfortunate about it is a lot of times we don't stick around to clean up the mess. We walk off and leave them and they're looking at the chunks in their hair and they're going, and we leave them with this mess to clean up because you and I emotionally upchuck on people all the time. And what's super unfair about this whole thing that we do is that when we have these events happen, when the phenomenon rises up and you and I hit some wall, whatever it is that causes you to just verbally spew on people, whatever it is that causes that inside of you, whatever it is, my guess is that I have no idea where I was going with that, and I'm really sorry. This happens to me. I don't know why lately. My brain is not functioning. Everybody take a second, laugh, and go, Kent forgot what he was saying, right? This is why you should use notes as a preacher. Most of us spew on people like that. We I'm not going to recover well, am I? Everybody take a second, look at your neighbor and go, now he's not being able to recover. Thanks for laughing, you guys. I love it. We all spew on people like that. And the unfortunate thing for them is that we can walk away and leave them. A lot of you have this happen to you. Maybe you show up for work and you find out that there's a meeting called and you're getting chewed out and it was something you had no idea was happening and you're just like blown away by it and you just spew out there all over people. Some of you ladies, maybe you've had this happen late at night. You wake up in the middle of the night and you go to use the restroom and you go to sit down on that toilet and all of a sudden the seat is lower than it used to be. Something happened to it and you take a little bath because somebody left the toilet seat up and there's that whisper spew, right? I can't believe you just left the toilet seat. The kids were touching it. And you're like, oh, the husband just woke up and he's like, oh, it's all over me. I don't know what I did. And we spew all the time. It is unfortunate. I think this is what I was going to say earlier. It's unfortunate that most of the time, the people who this kind of upchuck gets left all over are the people that we love the very most. Because we know, at least we think we know, that they're not going to walk out on us. You see, what I'm here to tell you is that no matter how solid you think your relationship is, there's a potential for your child to walk out of your life. Because you're letting all of that stress that's building up over here push you to explode on them about little things. I can't believe you left your homework at home. It's homework, Mama, Yeah, right, yeah. You're yelling at your child and you're blowing up at them for these little things. You're blowing up at your husband. You are blowing up on your parents or even maybe shutting them out with your words. You see, our words can be so incredibly destructive and so powerful. And my question and the problem that I think most of us exist within is we don't know how to stop it. You may have tried several things. Have you ever tried to count to 10? If you're somebody really straight, I'll count to 10. What I find when I'm counting to 10 is it just helps me think of better words to use. You're like, 1, ooh, that's a good one. 2, that's going that direction. 3, oh man, they're not going to be able to come back out of that. We try to control it. We try to manage it. You try to learn to self-monitor so I'm watching myself in the way that I'm talking. But ultimately, for somebody who really struggles with this, who struggles with finding explosive moments where you just verbally upchuck on people. Do you like that image? The problem is, most of the tips and techniques don't really work. They might help you get a little better, but you still struggle. This morning, I want us to go to the book of James. And so we're going to turn to James chapter 3. If you guys will get your Bibles open to that, if you have it on your phone and you want to do that, that's great. We're going to go to James chapter 3, and James is actually talking about the tongue and the power of our words, and James is an incredibly practical book. If you want to know just right away, how do I live out my Christian faith, you should read the book of James, because James just says, this is what it is to be a Christ follower, this is how we engage with him, this is how you, after you're connected to God, this is how you live out that connection. James is just powerful. So James chapter 3, this is what he's going to say in verse 9. He says this, with the tongue, we praise our Lord and Father, and with it, we curse human beings. Right? You get that. You know the person who comes to church on Sunday, and they're all like, oh, praise Jesus, and they're like raising their hand up in the air, and they're that person. And on Sunday, they're praising, and on Monday, they're PO'd, right? And their mouth, the very same mouth, is praising God one moment, and it's putting out filth the next moment. You totally know what he's talking about. This is even one of the big complaints with people who aren't Christians, is they look at us and they go, well, yeah, you guys are just hypocrites. You say you're this way, but I see you that way on Sunday, and on this other day, you're just total. I had a buddy when I was in high school who I was trying to just share with about my experience with Jesus. It was shortly after I'd come to Christ, and I cared about this guy tremendously. And I had been trying to get him to come to church with me. I had been sharing my story with him. And he finally went to this other youth group. For some reason, he went to this other youth group. And he walks in, and there's all these cool kids in there from school. You remember high school, and all he cared about was being popular and cool. And everybody kind of cared about that. And he walks in, and all these cool kids are super nice to him. And they're glad that he's there, and they include him. And the next day, I talked to him like in the first hour, and he's like, dude, I went to this youth group, and it was amazing. They just really loved on me. Later on that day, I checked in with him. I was like, Jack, how are you doing? I can't believe that you went to church, and how awesome is that? And he said, I'm never going back again. And I was like, what? And he said, yeah, all those kids who were nice to me, I walked into my photography class today, they were all in there, and they all started making fun of me. He said, I'm done with church. And as far as I know, Jack has not stepped foot in a church since. It's all the power of the word. It's powerful, isn't it? Most of us don't even realize the effect we're having on those outside of the body of Christ, let alone your family. How many kids don't go to church today because they saw their parents at church living one way and acting a totally different way? You see, this is perhaps one of the most vital things for you to get under control. And James says, with our tongue we praise our Lord and Father, and with it we curse human beings who've been made in God's likeness. I wonder, this is just a side note, but I wonder if I'm God and I made somebody in my own likeness and you're cursing them and making fun of them and being kind of mean to them, how I might perceive. I mean, if it's my kid, I punch you in the face. I'm just saying, Verse 10, out of the same mouth come praise and cursing. My brothers and sisters, this should not be. Can both fresh water and salt water flow from the same spring? My brothers and sisters, can a fig tree bear olives? Get it? Can a fig tree bear olives? It bears figs. Fig Newtons, I think, just to be correct. Just kidding. I'm just being funny. Or a grapevine bear figs? Neither can a salt spring produce fresh water. You get it? Can all these things produce these various other kinds? Can you take a fig tree and have it produce olives? Well, no, because it's a fig tree. Can a salt spring produce fresh water? Well, no, because it has salt in the water. It's just an impossibility for it. And James is saying, he doesn't in so many words say this, but he's challenging each of us. If you say you're a follower of Christ, and yet your words don't reflect that, my brothers, how can this be? How can it be? You see, I think it's not enough for us to just have stepped across the line at some point and said, okay, I believe in Jesus, and now that's it. That's enough for me. Well, it really does matter that it gets incorporated into our lives and that it actually changes us. This morning, my gut on all of this is that you cannot change the fruit of a tree without changing the type of root of that tree. Does this make sense to you? You can't, my wife and I planted a couple of years ago. We're in a newer neighborhood and people buy like $700 trees. We buy the $10 trees that are this big and just hope that they make it. So for the last 2.5 years, we have been tending this little baby apple tree and this little baby peach tree. And every year the peach tree gets flowers and one deformed peach comes out and we throw it over the fence. And so we've been tending to them. We've been loving on them. I go out and I put Mozart on for the trees to hear. I don't really do that, but I speak nice things to it, and we're trying to get come on, little baby, you can do it, and get it to grow up and become a nice, healthy tree someday that produces fruit. And this year we built a fence, and one day we walked outside, and our apple tree and peach tree were gone, and Peter, my son, had new swords that he was playing with. And he had broken them off and was playing with them. But I always thought, because for you, thanks everybody, I appreciate that. We tended them for years now, and he had a sword for a day. I've always thought, how will I know it's actually an apple tree? Because for years we've had it there, and nothing ever came out of it. You know how I would know? It would produce apples, right? If you want to know what kind of tree you are, don't say I'm a Christ follower. Be a Christ follower. Now, I don't know about you, but that is pretty challenging to me. Because it means that it's not just enough that I say I'm a certain thing. It matters how I actually act and how I actually live my life out. It matters when I am in that emotional zone where, it's like blowing up a balloon and you're blowing and you're blowing and you're putting all that pressure on it. And when it finally pops, you see what's inside of it. And for a lot of us, Americans live in this moment of pressure just constantly. We're working crazy amount of hours. We have kids that are needing to go a million different directions. We're just under pressure. And as that balloon blows up and it pops, you find out what you're really made of. As a matter of fact, I want to read you something that Jesus said. In Luke 6:45, this is super challenging to me. Luke 6:45, he says this: a good man brings good things out of the good stored up in his heart. And an evil man brings evil things out of the evil stored up in his heart. For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. That should cut to your quick. If you're somebody who explodes in rage and anger, and your words are like upchuck all over I'm not saying that you're not in stressful situations. I'm not even saying that there isn't a time to have forceful words and to be a strong person. I'm not saying that at all, but I'm talking about those moments that you all know about where you walk away from having yelled at your child and you go, I may have just damaged them. Those moments where you think, after what I just said, I'm not sure my spouse is ever going to really trust me again. Do you know what I'm talking about? Those moments where you explode. And Jesus, so very perceptive, says that it is as though the layers are peeled back and your heart, just whatever is in there comes out. You see, I would propose to you guys this morning that if you want to change the fruit, you have to change your root. Jesus even says in a place in the New Testament, he talks in the Gospels, he talks about if you want to change the fruit, you need to get a new tree. It's not that you can just say, "Come on, apple tree, produce me a peach. Give me come on. You can do it. You can do fight. It's not like you can just tell the apple tree and you can feed it peach tree food and it'll give you a peach. The apple tree is designed to give you what is deep inside of it. So if you want a different fruit to come out, you have to actually change the tree. And I think this is one of the number one problems for a lot of Christians is that we said, Jesus, I want your salvation. I want what you did, the work on the cross to free me from my sins. But we don't actually say, I surrender my entire life to you. I surrender that deep down anger that's inside of me. I surrender that deep down hurt that just is almost a friend to me. I go to it in all those moments. I surrender my deep insecurities, where I'm constantly worried about what everybody else thinks about me. You see, we will let Jesus have our big sins. But we have a problem when it gets deeper into like actually saying, I surrender it all to you. I need a new tree. I need something inside of me. I need to become a new person. I want to read you this. This is something that Jesus said in John 15:5. This has, I don't know why, but over the last year or so, I keep being brought back to this passage. In John 15, Jesus is talking, he's using this illustration about a vine that grows grapes. And this is what he says about the vine. He says, I am the vine, and you are the branches. He's saying, I can be your root system if you would like. I can give you a new tree. This is the miracle, I think, of following Christ, that literally, I know in my own life, I am an example of having my root system totally transformed. I know there are people in this room who could stand up here and share with you, my root system, it's not like it just turned into another one. It's like the old one was killed off and a new system was totally put in place. I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Listen to this though. Apart from me, you can do nothing. You see, what has become kind of the norm in our Christian culture is just to try harder. You'll have a pastor get up here and give you, and I do this sometimes even too. We'll give you 5 steps, like if you do these 5 things, you'll get rid of that sin that's in your life. It's not about you working harder. It's not about you being better. It's not about you having it more together. That's the very reason that Jesus himself died. Steve Moore, I heard him say this the other day. He died because you're not perfect. Not so that you could try to be good enough. He died because you don't have it all together, to give you a new root system, to take you from a tree that produced rotten old apples and to make you this beautiful, luscious peach tree. I love a good peach. I'm just telling you. That's why he came. And so often, so many of us just try harder. And I am telling you, you cannot try hard enough. It's crazy. I feel blessed to have had kind of this realization when I was a teenager. I remember, for me, back then it was cussing. Do you remember? Maybe you still cuss and that's still a struggle for you, but I think in the adult world, like cussing is kind of like the least of our problems. It's usually like, I just ripped that person a new hole and like, I'm not sure they're going to be able to sleep tonight. But as a kid, it's cussing, and I'm sitting on the edge of my bed, and I'm praying to God. I'm like, I just can't stop cussing. I'm trying. And I felt like, it wasn't like I heard a voice. I'm not schizophrenic, all right? But I did feel this kind of prompting from God that was like, why are you so focused on your sin instead of the one who can fix your sin? You're over here trying to manage all of your sin. You're trying to stop this and stop that and don't do this and don't do that. Why are you not just focusing on me and let me eradicate those things? Folks, for me as a teenager, it's crazy. I can look back and see how my whole life has been influenced by that one moment sitting on my bed, allowing God to speak into my life. This morning, I want to just come to you and say, perhaps it's not so much just a behavioral thing that look. There are things that you can learn, tips and techniques that will help you. I'm not discounting all that, but perhaps there's something more elemental going on. You see, Tim the band, he's doing a fantastic job, isn't he, guys? I'm not joking about that here. Yeah, give it up. They really mean it. It's just an awkward time to clap. God, I'm such a nerd. The thing that I think most of us may not get is that there is something more elemental going on inside of us. You see, Jenny and I tried a lot of things with Parker when every night she would start, and I'm shaking and sweating. Remember that? We tried all kinds of stuff. We would try like getting her in bed earlier or keeping her up later. Or, we tried all these things. And we tried to kind of manage it. Do you know what we ended up finding out was happening? We're super dumb, 2 years. Parker is lactose intolerant. And every night, Parker took a big cup of milk to bed and chugged it. And it said, more milk. And she would take another big cup of milk and chug it. And then about 30 to 40 minutes later, she starts coughing and pukes it all up. We're dumb. Okay, Jenny's not dumb, but I certainly am dumb. It was what was going into her that was causing this phenomenon. There's a reason why Paul in the New Testament talks about being filled with the Spirit and being led by the Spirit. And then almost every time after he talks about that, he says, therefore, set your mind on things above. It's because it's exactly what Jesus said. What you're filled with is what will come out of you. If you have evil that's going inside of you all of the time, if all you're ever doing is focusing on this world and how you can control things and how you can make it all happen, and it's all just about you and that's all that matters, guess what's going to come out of you? Lots of frustration, lots of evil, lots of all over people. But if you cut that out and you start to put things inside of your system that are not, you're not intolerant to, like you start to really focus on what does it mean to be a loving person? How do I care for my spouse in this moment? I know we're both heated right now, but how do I even just say, look, let's just step back. Let's just step back and even pray. Let's set our mind. What if you took your kid? I've done this with my kids some now. Either Peter is just 5, but there have been times where we're both kind of heated already. And I say, Pete, why don't we just stop and pray about our attitudes and what we're doing right now? Do you know what? When you set your mind on things above, it actually changes something because what's in your heart, the root of who you are is being transformed and taken out. Guys, I'm not perfect and I don't have it all together. As a matter of fact, I feel like, if anything, over the last week, Jesus has been, again, calling me back to that passage in John 15. The old way of saying it, the new way is, I am the vine, whoever is in me. The old way was Jesus said, abide in me. Like that's the way it used to be translated. And I feel him just saying to me lately, abide in me. Folks, I don't know where you're at. Maybe you at one point did give that part of yourself to Christ and you surrendered yourself. My guess is that you have seen some fruit inside of you that's pretty broken lately. You've seen some intolerance in you that is causing you to and upchuck. I'm telling you, there may be a chance for you right now to go to even a person in here. We're going to take communion in a moment. But maybe you need to go to somebody, a family member, a kid, whatever. I'll tell you, parents, the biggest thing you can do for your kid, think about if your parents had done this for you, is to go to them and say, you know what? I haven't been treating you like I should, and I'm really sorry. Will you forgive me? You know how many of your kids, they might not show anything on the outside, but on the inside, they'd be just bawling. Because they still love you, and they still want to have you in their life. That's huge. So you can repent. There's an old Bible word for just turn around, stop doing it, get away from it. It may be for you, you need to just surrender. Maybe even for the first time to Christ. And let him take your old tree and give you a new one. Because I'm just telling you from my experience, it is the very best thing I've ever done in my life. It has, for the last 20, 25 years, been like the best adventure I've ever been on. Because all of a sudden, instead of kind of being opposed to God, I'm on his team. And not only am I on his team, but I actually found out that he really, really exists. And he really, really lives. And he really, really, really wants to have a relationship with you. He wants to be by your side. So this morning, I invite you, if you want to make a decision for Christ even, you can put that on your connection card. And man, I'll get in touch with you this week, not in a creepy, weird way, but I'd love to talk with you and just see how God's moving in your life. I invite you, though, whatever you do, during this next moment of communion where we take the bread to remember Christ's body broken for us and we take the juice to remember his blood shed for us, I invite you to really commune with the real God. And if there's a place that you're saying, man, I can see there's something inside of me that keeps spewing out, deal with that. Like, be an adult and deal with it. And invite him to change the root. Say, I need to start learning how to abide in you. I guarantee you, it will change your life. It just will. Whenever you guys are ready, you can stand up and during this next song, go and partake of communion.